Okay, so in this session, we are, going to talk about the potential to extend Nephio for enterprise use case. So, yeah, so basically, Nephio's goal is, to deliver the carrier grade, simple, open Kubernetes based cloud native intent automation for the network functions and the underlying infrastructure for that. But basically, Nephio can also be as effective for enterprise use cases in addition to the telco use cases. So, and Nephio can basically orchestrate and manage cloud native applications in addition to network functions. So here we will just discuss about some of the approaches for the same. So basically, we can approach it in two different ways. One is we can align it with some of the enterprise use cases, or we can align it with some of the open source communities. So I will start with some of the use cases. So LLM orchestration is one of the use case where we can use Nephio, and security orchestration. So I'll briefly touch upon security orchestration, which is from Equinox, and then IoT use case. Yeah, so we will talk about all the use cases briefly in the upcoming slides. And there we can also collaborate with open source communities like Open Tofu. So yeah, so Open Tofu basically, I mean, it's a fork of Terraform. So HashiCorp changed the licensing scheme of their product. So after that, community forked the Terraform and named it as Open Tofu. And now it is a Linux Foundation project. And communities like L3F is also one of the communities where Nephio can collaborate with. So we'll start with the LLM orchestration. So the idea is basically like we have a cluster API for Kubernetes, right? Why not envision an LLM orchestration API? So a CRD, so we can basically a CRD which can be used to orchestrate LLM itself. So basically, we can have different layers underneath. So we can have the infrastructure layer. So infrastructure layer is actually that's already existing. There is nothing new we need to do for that. We can just extend it for bare metal and other use cases. And then we can have a network service layer on top. So instead of talking about the 5G, there we might have different network services which are in context to the LLM. Like it can be a network service to connect the large language model to SD-WAN POP. There might be a network service to connect the LLM to the cloud data source, etc. And below there can be a controller or operator per model. So one for example, one for Llama 2, one for LangChain, and so on and so forth. So we can use the existing Nephio design principles to automate the deployment of AI model across different clusters, similar to how we just saw 5G network functions automation in the demo in the previous session. We can also use AI itself in Nephio in the context of service assurance, closed loops, predict the anomalies in data traffic pattern using AI models, and then perform certain actions. We can also use Nephio to resolve high-level intents and find the best resource to deploy an end-to-end service. So these are some of the things which can be considered. So security orchestration, I'll just briefly talk about it. So it was brought up by a company called Equinox. So they have that idea of security as an orchestration layer. So the security is spread across different layers. For example, infra layer, application layer, and security edge, the edge level. So yeah, so I'll just quickly walk it through now. yeah, so this is again in the same context. Yeah, so we can talk about the IoT cloud native application orchestration use case. So basically, we can use Nephio design principle along with the existing Nephio controllers to build IoT cloud automation platform. So there are a number of low footprint Kubernetes distribution out there. For example, MicroShift, Portainer, K0s, K3s. So Nephio can be used to set up the infrastructure by provisioning lightweight Kubernetes clusters at the edge. And then, of course, it can be used to deploy the IoT application on top of that. And it can also take care of the network automation and management, and things like service assurance via continuous reconciliation. Uh, yeah, OpenTofu also Nephio basically can bring a slew of valuable features to OpenTofu for edge and cloud use cases. A lot of our learnings on this actually came from a project in Linux Foundation Edge Acrino called PCEI, Public Cloud Edge Interface. So we were using Terraform there for each specific domain, like Equinix Fabric, Azure Express Route. And when it came to stitching the complete topology together, the things were not very smooth. And the reason for that was some of the features which were missing, which we think that Nephio can provide. So some of the features are like declarative intent. So instead of infrastructure as a code, we can have infrastructure as data. And business intent to IT intent. So you don't need sophisticated IT skills. You don't need someone who can create the Terraform plan, but the controllers will create the Terraform plan on its own. And scale, obviously Nephio is for scale, and it uses the pull model for that. And dependency handling, again, in the PCI use case, which I just talked about, there were a lot of dependencies. We first have to run, for instance, we first have to run the Azure Express Route Terraform and then get the provider keys. And those provider keys will be an input to the next Terraform plan. For example, Equinix Fabric. And there were a bunch of other, Terraform plans in the workflow. So there were a lot of dependency, and we know that Nephio can handle the dependencies very elegantly because it separates the dependency. I mean, by the controllers. And of course, the other features which Nephio can bring in is constant state reconciliation using Git model and rollback, etc. So I will just briefly talk about the diagram here so that we can understand how we can use Nephio with OpenTofu. So we can break this down, this diagram, into different pieces. So first is the intent. So the intent is a very high level declaration of the user requirement. So it's purely declarative. So in this example, the intent is to create a topology comprising the infrastructure, which is bare metal server at the edge location connected to an application server hosted on a VM in Azure via the Equinix Fabric and Azure Express route. So this is the high level intent which user will provide. And the Nephio controller will reconcile the intent. So the controller initiates a pipeline which is executed by a set of Nephio controllers and KRM functions. So similar to what we saw in the demo. So the controllers synchronize using the Kubernetes status conditions. So basically, we propose a KRM function that can automate the generation of OpenTofu plans. So in this example, let's assume that we have functions which can create OpenTofu plans for Equinix Metal, Azure VM, Equinix Fabric, and all the other resources. So which are required for the topology, end-to-end topology, including VLANs, Azure Express Route, BGP gateways, etc. So the VLANs, Azure Express Route, and BGP gateways are not specified in the intent itself by the user. Rather, these are the resources which are inferred by the Nephio specialization controllers. The specialization controllers create an inventory plan in order to accomplish the user intent. And the plan then becomes input to the KRM functions, which we know how to, which knows basically how to generate the OpenTofu plans for different providers. And then we have the management staging repo, similar to what we saw, in the previous slides. The purpose of this repo is to host the curated packages, which consist of all the OpenTofu plans that are required to create the required, infrastructure topologies. So, and of course, these packages are version controlled because they are in Git. And then we have config sync, which reconciles the packages from management to the staging repo. The packages have 3 life cycles. So we saw it multiple times. So approved, propose, approved, and publish. So these lifecycle stages are managed by Nephio controllers, which push packages to the repositories. Config sync reconcile the package that are published, that are in published state. So it's basically the same thing which we saw in the demo, right? And of course, we'll have an OpenTofu executor, which executes the OpenTofu plan and hence realizes the infrastructure resources. And Kubernetes cluster bootstrap, it's the same thing. So Nephio has a controller which uses cluster API internally for provisioning the Kubernetes clusters and then bootstrapping those clusters. So bootstrapping essentially at a minimum means that, having a config sync installed and it points to the target Git repository. Yeah, so I'll just briefly talk about L3F also. So we can also think of this use case or this collaboration. So L3F is basically, it provides orchestration of eBPF kernel functions, a kernel function marketplace where users can share eBPF programs and any associated user space programs. Nephio along with L3F, we can envision a Nephio controller for L3F platform. So Nephio KRM functions to dynamically create the required configuration interface with L3F controllers. Yeah, so these were some of the high level ideas. So if there are any opinions or questions, please feel free.
Hi, Sandeep. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. I had a question about your integration with OpenTofu. Yeah, two questions. The first one for the infra intent. What kind of customer resource is used for that? Did you define a new CRD?
Yes.
Okay. So you have a new controller?
We have an operator written, which is a topology controller or a topology operator. So we have a topology CR, which basically reads it and then performs all the operation.
Okay. And just for clarification, you said you are using KRM function to provide an OpenTofu plan. But for me, OpenTofu is not based on KRM.
No.
So just for clarification.
So KRM functions will be used to create the OpenTofu plans. So
yeah. But are you using controllers for that? Because I mean, KRM function by nature is only manipulating some Kubernetes resource models on that sort.
Yeah. So this is actually it's not a POC or something which we have tried. So it's a very high level idea.
Okay.
Yeah, which we can, it's not a solution right now, but it's basically to start the discussion that we can have something like that. Okay. So obviously there will be challenges and there are certain things which we need to implement, but yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Okay. It's very good to see that you are already thinking of applying Nephio to something wider than not just for telco applications. And it might be controversial in these circles, but telco applications are not so special as we like to think. So it's very good. Are you also working already on these, or are these just ideas for you?
So I think we have sent a proposal. So, but it's at a very initial stage. Okay. So we are creating a document and we have sent a proposal for this.
Okay. Piggybacking for the previous question. So you are saying that, okay, it's a experimental thing, but you are experimenting with KRM functions that are outputting not KRM objects, not Kubernetes resources.
Not
Kubernetes resources. So I to be honest, I still don't understand your answer. So KRM functions or KPT functions has a specification. And that specification says that on its output, it will have different things like results and everything, but the most important thing is the output list of KRM resources, Kubernetes resources, basically.
Yeah.
So, okay. But you are wrapping the OpenTofu plans, like the Terraform plans, in KRM resources.
Yeah, it's kind of, maybe you can think of it as a wrapper. So
okay,
maybe the blueprint will have the KRM function files, and the the deployment repository will have the Terraform plans.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you using to actually actuate those Terraform plans? A pipeline or?
Yeah, that should be a pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe if Sandeep is online.
So on the question of, so actually there is already a KRM function in the KPT catalog for Terraform, and so that was actually, I mean, that is where we started. That is where we got inspired from. So there is already, there is a function. It can generate Terraform plans. Maybe we should have put link to that KPT function in this presentation.
Yeah. Were you able to hear that? Fine.
Yes, I think. Is it Sandeep?
Yeah, that's Sandeep. So yeah.
Yes. I
so there is an existing function in the catalog. Yes.
I will check it out.
Yeah. Sure.
Hello. I'm interested in the LLM orchestration use case. Have you finished this use case, or it's just a feature plan?
No, it's just an idea right now.
You haven't finished it yet?
We have?
You haven't finished this use case yet?
Not we haven't finished it. So it's just a proposal, and it just to kickstart, I mean, to have a conversation. So if anyone is interested to collaborate or have ideas, so they are, I mean, we can talk more on that. So nothing is implemented yet.
Okay, because we are also interested in LLM orchestration. I think we can have more communication later. And I think OpenTofu, you use OpenTofu. OpenTofu is the source bound of Nephio, and yeah. I think ONAP is northbound of Nephio. So I don't know whether it is possible to integrate ONAP, Nephio, OpenTofu together. What's your opinion? Does it possible? Is it possible?
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, it's something we are exploring. It's not we have implemented yet, but it definitely is should be possible. There might be some challenges in doing that, but yeah.
Okay. I think we can have some communication offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are also interested in those workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Okay.
I have a question regarding the large language model orchestrator. You would be expecting that the large language model would only serve as the interpreter between natural language to structured intent, or you're actually expecting the large language model be the orchestrator to do the orchestration decision?
So there are two parts to it. One is to orchestrate the large language model itself, along with the infrastructure and the other, network services, etc. And the other is to use LLM within the Nephio itself. For example, to resolve the high level intents, or for the closed loop automation. So there are two different approaches which we mentioned here. So one is to deploy the large language models, and one is to use them
To
within
deploy large language model on demand by
Yeah.
Nephio.
Yeah.
That is the idea.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Never thought about that before, because large language model is very consuming in terms of resources. But perhaps you meant an adapted model. That could be, but for foundation model, I don't think it would be the case that we will be deploying it from time to time.
Yeah. Again, these are the things which we can explore. Nothing concrete on that, but some ideas which we wanted to share.
Right. Actually, we would like to participate very actively, more actively than current situation, for Nephio. But we're suffering from the unfriendly timing of those, regularly calls for the community, because it is extremely unfriendly to Asia participants. So if you really welcome, like input from that part of the world, perhaps we could consider reschedule a little bit, especially around those hot topics that clearly we are highly interested in.
Yeah.
And thank you for taking that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think the issue of the timing has come up many times in the Nephio meetings, but it's very centric now on the west coast of the American continent. So
yes, we kind of like having the same problem, when LNAP is kicking off. So we are actually sacrificing a lot from the Asian, participation area. So anyhow, it is possible, it is also possible. Right now, they are all scheduled after midnight for Asia. So that made it impossible for us to participate.
I think our Indian colleagues as well, it's really bad time. I think it's not quite as late, but it's, but I guess it's something we should, I think it's probably more for the TSC members.
TSC members. So with Timo. So we had this discussion also. So for example, from some specific working group, we decided to have 2 slots, for example, one slot for Asian people, another slot for more US people.
Yeah,
so it depends on the working group, but typically that's something you can ask to any working group. So this afternoon we will present you with Timo the organization of Nephio, and the various working group are managed separately. So if you are interested in a particular working group, you can ask to join it, and maybe to reorganize the slots.
Well, I wouldn't say that would be a smart strategy, especially, from the community level, from the leadership level. So if it is, only left over to the topic specific arrangement, that does not show that you are actually running on a global.
We can raise the issue at the TSC level if you want. We can ask the question if you are very interesting, and to say that Chinese will be interested. We can ask that at TSC, put that at the agenda, of course. We can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if there are any questions, I'll stop. Thank you.